Well, shalom, folks. We are here at Sepphoris. We are in the lower Galilee, and of course, behind me would be the town of Nazareth, the boyhood town of Jesus in the 1st century AD. Sepphoris, also known in Hebrew as Zippori. Zippori means bird or birds, because you have a bird's eye view of the hills of the Galilee as well as all the towns. And that's the reason why it's called Zippor or Zippori. And of course, it's been pretty rainy out here, a little bit windy as you can hear. But Sepphoris was a very, very important town 2,000 years ago. Even though it's not mentioned in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it's not mentioned in the Gospels or in the New Testament, it was a really important town. After the death of Herod the Great, his son Herod Antipas ruled the Galilee area. Jesus referred to Herod Antipas as that fox in Luke chapter 13 and verse number 32. When Herod Antipas ruled the Galilee, he founded a town called Tiberias in honor of Tiberius Caesar. And he had Tiberias become the new capital of the Galilee in place of where we are right now in Sepphoris. When the Jews revolted against the Romans between the years 66 and 70 AD, the Jews here at Sepphoris decided not to rebel against Rome. And so Rome spared the city, and they spared the Jews here at that very time. But again, folks, this town is not mentioned at all in the Bible whatsoever, Old or the New Testaments or in the Gospels for that matter. But yet we have Nazareth that's 5 miles away. Now, of course, when Joseph and his family would come to Nazareth, they would look for work. And then, of course, if there's no work in Nazareth, well, what do? You would go to the nearest town that would have work. And of course, that would have been right here in Sepphoris, because 2,000 years ago in the 1st century, in the time of Jesus, this town was in building. This town was in construction. As a matter of fact, this was also the seat of where the Sanhedrin was after the Romans destroyed the temple in the year 70 AD. This was also where Rabbi Judah HaNisi codified the Mishnah, the oral law that was carried by memory, by tradition, since the Babylonian captivity in 586 BC. Jews would carry the oral tradition in memory until Rabbi Judah HaNisi codified it right here at Sepphoris. And of course, you know, extra biblical writings, you know, mention this town, like the Babylonian Talmud, the Mishnah, the Gemara, and so on and so forth. But if Joseph would have found no work in Nazareth, just right behind where we are over here, you know, you see that little strip of white behind me over there, that would be Nazareth. Well, he would have walked 5 miles to Nazareth here to Sepphoris, and he would have found work. That would be the Greek word tekton. Tekton would mean builder, mason, or carpenter. And so that was Joseph's trade. So some of the stones that you would see here at Sepphoris was probably laid by Joseph himself, and even Jesus, for that matter, who took up that trade as the carpenter. You know, we refer to Yeshua, Jesus, as my boss, as a Jewish carpenter. Well, that would have been his trade, because he took that trade after his stepfather. So they would have came here to Sepphoris, and they would have found employment, even though they lived only 5 miles in Nazareth from where we are right now. But again, you know, Sepphoris is not mentioned in the Bible at all. But I believe, folks, that Jesus would have made an indirect reference to this place, because Jesus said in Matthew 5:14, ye are the light of the world, a city that is set on a hill that cannot be hid. Well, folks, we are right now on a hill. We are on an ancient city on a hill that cannot be hid, because Sepphoris is out here in the open. It's on the top of a hill overlooking all the other hills here in the Galilee. And so I believe Jesus was very, very familiar with this area. I believe that he even came to this area. He visited the area of Sepphoris, even though it is not mentioned at all in the Gospels. But Sepphoris is a city that is set on a hill. It affords you a bird's eye view of the area of the Galilee. But you remember what Jesus said, ye are the light of the world, a city that is set on a hill that cannot be hid. And so I believe, folks, that he made indirect reference to this place called Sepphoris or Sepphoris. And you know, folks, that reminds me that as believers and followers of Yeshua, the Lord Jesus, he calls you and I to be a light to the world. As a matter of fact, he said in Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven. And of course, that is the job of every believer, is to glorify the Lord Jesus, because he said that he was the light of the world in John chapter 8, verse 12. Jesus said, Ani or ha'olam, which is Hebrew for I am the light of the world. So just as Yeshua, the Lord Jesus, is a light to the world, we are to be that very same light to the world. Just as that light, that menorah, the 7 branch candelabra, gave light to the tabernacle. It gave light to the first and second Jewish temples. Jesus was the fulfillment of that menorah.